Hi, welcome to the Travel and Expense Spend Analytics Tool briefing session. I will take you through the tool today and how to access the tool, use the tool, and what's contained in this tool. So starting from the staff intranet, you can get to any of the IAP Insights modules by scrolling down and selecting IAP Insights from the system logins. So if we click on IAP Insights, and then you will need to log in with your UniKey and password. And then this will take you to the welcome page. So from the welcome page, you can get to the Spend Analytics tool through the Dashboards dropdown. So if I select Dashboards dropdown and then look for Spend Analytics and click on the Concur Spend Analysis link. And that will take me to the top level dashboard. Okay, now we're in the Overall Expenses tab, and you can see within this report there's a number of graphs. What I'll just talk you through firstly is a little bit about the data. So this data is available from 2017, and it comes from the Concur Travel and Expense corporate card data, which has been incorporated into the tool. Just as a note, the prior Freedom data has not been incorporated into the tool. This data is at an expense line level with allocations to more than one RCPC included. And you will also see transactions that have not been acquitted included in this report, as well as those that have. So we load this data daily. What you will notice when you look at the transaction dates is it can be about 48 hours old, as it takes that time to come across between the systems. And we load the data at about 6 p.m. each day, so you'll also notice if you are working during that time that you might get changes to the data. So best to keep that in mind between about 5 and 8 p.m. Okay, so that was just a bit about the data itself. We can have a look at the dimensions of the data. So looking across the top at the filters that you can see, so we have year, month, we have category. We just drop down and have a look at a few of the categories, for example. We have project type, discretionary, tied, and support. And as I just mentioned, we have the approval status, which, as you can see, has approved transactions as well as others not submitted, sent back to employee, etc. The next set of prompts are for the master organizational hierarchy, and across the master organizational hierarchy you can see level 3, which is like your faculties, DVC portfolios, etc. You can see level 4, which has, say, schools, university schools, clinical schools, and the level 5, which has disciplines, departments, centers, and institutes. So these three prompts work together. So if I were to, for example, select a prompt from the level 3, and as I mentioned, these are things like the faculties and the PSUs, for example. But if, for example, I wanted to select one of the faculties, say arts and social sciences, then you'll also see that at the level 4, you only get a selection from those level 4s that are within arts and social sciences. So in this case, the schools of arts. And I can select one from here, but at the moment, I'll just leave that as it is. So anytime I make a selection, in this case, I've selected arts and social sciences, I need to hit the apply button. Always remember that. And that will then reflect in the dashboard. So just going through what we can see in the dashboard, we have a number of metrics across the top. So total spend, number of transactions, average spend per transaction and per month. And then we have a number of graphs. So we have spend by month. As you can see, that this takes us back to the beginning of 2017 and through the current date. This graph here with the organizational departments by spend, because I've selected arts and social sciences, I can see the schools below that. So it takes you to one level below what you have selected when you have a level 3 selected, for example. I can see my top 10 categories by spend, airfare at the top, and working my way down, so top 10 vendors by spend, Qantas is there at the top, not surprisingly. Staff members and top 1,000 staff members. Just as a note, you won't see people's names within this demonstration as we have masked the names. And the top 1,000 staff members graph is particularly used to point out outliers in the data. So we could be looking at ones like this one where it's about a high number of transactions, or for example, this one up here, which might be a high value of transactions. That's the main use of that particular graph. So one thing we might want to do once we've sort of had a look at this data is we might want to go and look at a bit more detail. So for example, if I want to focus on April 2018 data, I can click on that bar and have a look at a breakdown. Now I might want to look at level 3, level 4, or level 5, but as I'm focused on a level 3 at this point, I'll select the level 3 department summary, and that will take me to another level of detail. So the department summary report shows me a breakdown at the next level down. So again, as I'm filtered on arts and social sciences, that's carried through from the previous report. And I've also carried through the month, which is where I clicked on the graph. So as you can see on the left-hand side, we have arts and social sciences by category. We scroll down, we can see a total for that selection. And on the right-hand side, we have a further breakdown, and you can see all the employees listed within arts and social sciences. So another thing that we can have a look at on this screen, we've now added a vendor prompt. So we can filter to vendors on this screen if we wanted to focus down on a particular set of vendors or a particular vendor. So having a look at the highlighted items, so when I run my mouse over these items, you can see that they're hyperlinked, and I could make a selection from one of these and drill down further. I also have a couple of hyperlinked items here. So for example, I'm looking at arts and social sciences, but I might want to have a look at the level 4 summary, still focused on arts and social sciences. So I click on level 4 department summary, and I've now jumped to that report. So this one then shows me, again, still focused on arts, but I also get a subtotal and a breakdown of each of the schools within arts. And then on the right-hand side, I can focus on one particular school, and I can get a drop down of the other schools within arts. So just the next thing I'd like to do is take it to another level of detail. So for example, I might be interested in the airfares within Arts and Social Sciences Administration. So by selecting airfare and choosing the data exploration view, I can then go down to the next level of detail. So this one, the data exploration view, takes us down to the transaction level detail for each of these transactions. And I've carried through, again, the filters from the previous screen. So for example, I clicked on airfare to drill down to this level. And also, because of where I clicked, I also filtered myself down to Arts and Social Sciences Administration. So those prompts have carried through. And in this case, I'm only seeing 3 transactions down at this level because of the limits that I've set. Now, I might be interested, instead of just looking at Arts and Social Sciences Administration, I might want to open up that filter and go back to looking at all column values within Arts and Social Sciences. And again, I have to remember to click the Apply button to make my changes take effect. So now we have a few more transactions to have a look at, and I might also be interested in looking at a bit more information about these transactions than what I have available on the screen. So if, for example, I'm interested in looking at the transaction ID for each of these transactions. I can right-click on the column heading. In this case, I'm going to right-click on the transaction date column heading. And then I get a selection of options. So I'm going to have a look at the include column. And then from there, I'm going to include the transaction ID. So what that will do, it will add that column in. And as you can see, it's added that column in just to the right of where I clicked. So transaction date and transaction ID. Other things I might be interested in doing on this data exploration view level, I might want to sort. So for example, the transaction date, I could choose to sort that descending. I can sort that ascending using these arrows. I could also choose within this menu to look at sorting columns. Again, sorting ascending, descending. I could also add a sort. If I already have sorts set on this report, I can add additional sorts. That can be quite useful. Another function to show is the ability to exclude a column. So I previously included the transaction ID column. I could exclude any column, but I might just use that one as an example. And then I can choose the exclude column option. And that allows me just to take that column away. So some additional functionality within this level. If I'd like to add a subtotal, for example, and I think I'm going to just use the level 4 name MOH to add my subtotal. So again, I can come over to that column, right click on that heading, and I get that same menu options. So if I want to show a subtotal after the values, so as you can see, it's added a subtotal. So we've got a subtotal of the posted amount after each of the level 4s. It's not terribly useful in this particular view, given how we have the columns ordered. So to make it a bit more meaningful, I'm going to move the employee name column. So I can go to employee name, just use my left mouse this time. I'm going to click on that, and I can move this column within the level 4, and that enables me to change the grouping. So now it's a bit more meaningful to have a subtotal for each of the schools. So I've been doing a few things here. I've been doing a little bit of customization, some sorting. I might decide at one point that I'd like to just start fresh, put this report back to where it started in terms of the customizations. So I can come up here to the cog up in the top right hand corner, click on that, and I get a number of options. And one of those is to clear my customization. So this might be something I want to do if I have, again, made a few changes and just want to go back to where things started. I won't do that for now. I'll leave things as they are. So a couple more things on this screen. One thing just down the bottom of the table. So if you scroll to the bottom of the table, there's an export button. So this enables me to export the data in this table in a number of formats. I could export to PDF, Excel, and CSV format. Those are the main useful ones. There are a few other formats there. Those are the ones you'll probably tend to find that come in handy. Okay, so let's look at some other options for how we can use our filters. So for example, we might want to filter down on a particular vendor. In this case, instead of just choosing the vendor from the list, I might want to do a search. So one tip when you're doing a search is to deselect the all column values option first before you hit the search button. So now I will select search. And let's say, for example, I want to find any transactions with Virgin in the name, in the vendor name. So I can choose Virgin. It will look for anything that contains Virgin, and I don't need to worry about the case sensitivity. So if I hit search here, you can see that I actually get a number of options for this vendor. So the way the data comes in for this vendor, there's obviously a code that's attached to the vendor name. So instead of just selecting one of these, we can select them all at the same time by clicking the double arrows. And then if I say OK at this point, and again hit apply, I'll filter this down to only the transactions with any of those virgin numbers on them. So this is quite useful if you have something like, for example, Virgin, or if, say, Woolworths, or any other examples where you might want to select multiples of that vendor. So this is pretty much all I wanted to show you down at this level. So one of the other options that you can do for navigation is to use what we call breadcrumbs. So just down the bottom of this page, you can see the path that I took to get here. So I started at overall expenses, and I moved to a level 3 department summary, level 4, and then I came down to the data exploration view. So if I want to go back, I can choose to go back one step at a time, or for example, I can jump all the way back to where I started. So in this case, I'm going to go back to the overall expenses. And as you can see, it's actually come back into this report where I left it. So I had already filtered to arts and social sciences before I started my drill down. So one thing I wanted to show you back in this report is, for example, if I'm the Dean of Arts and Social Sciences, I might want to save this as my view when I come into the tool. So one way to do that is to what we call save a customization. So I can go back to my cog and choose that option. I select save a current customization. Gives me the option of giving this a name, and I'm going to call it Arts Test 2. I can make this my default for this page if I like. What that'll allow me to do is the next time I log in, it'll automatically come to this page with this filter set. If I don't want to set it as a default, I can just save it as a customization and choose it myself. So that's what I'm going to do this time. I'll say OK, and I've now just saved that customization. So just to demonstrate how that works, I can choose to reset my prompts. So I'm going to reset my prompts to the default value for this report. You can see that's cleared out my prompt for arts, and I'll hit apply. So this is taking me back to that starting position when we first came in. And just to show how you would apply a saved customization, I chose Arts Test 2. That's now done my filtering for me and refreshed the page. So I can have a number of customizations saved, as you could see when I just made that selection. I might have multiple different views that I want to save and use at different times. It just gives me a quick way to get to those. So that's pretty much shown you the functionality that we wanted to show in this report. Thank you very much for your time.